Moving on. Now, earlier, space program was only centered around government fundings, government initiatives, but now space race has begun, not only in the developed countries, but in India too. Many companies are leading by example. Ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to invite Rahul Vatts, Chief Regulatory Officer, Bharti Airtel, for the keynote session on space race and ground realities. Over to you, Mr. Vatts.
At the outset, I congratulate Pradeep Gupta and Voice&Data for organizing the Telecom Leadership Forum and thank them for inviting me in this session. The conference theme, Era of Convergence from 5G to Gen Z, is timely as India is set to usher in League of 5G nations this year. At Airtel, we are really excited to be part of this journey. We have our 5G ready network and we are ready to deliver this new experience to our valued customers. However, that conversation is for some other day. Today, I would like to really speak about the space segment, wherein the Bharti Group has taken a very giant leap by investing in OneWeb and partnering with the best with the aim to bring connectivity to hitherto unconnected parts of the world through its LEO constellation of satellites. Space is the next growth frontier for mankind. From interplanetary travel to setting up broadband networks in the sky to LEOs with the aim to connect everyone to a better future. As India continues to position itself as an important international player in space technology, it is moving towards increasing its capacity and capability to use space technology, products, and services, not just for societal applications, but to support commercial space activities and pursue diplomatic as well as security objectives. The Indian space program is one of the world's fastest growing. India's space sector has grown in last decade to include television and broadband services, space science, exploration, space-based navigation, defense and security applications, applications from schools, hospitals, etc., and has seen an increase in investment in space products and services. The government of India, under visionary leadership of our Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi, has unleashed bold reforms for the space industry. These include setting up InSpace, the space regulator, and also encouraging the participation of private enterprise through ease of business. The Honorable PM had asked the industry to look at forming an association that can complement the efforts of the government and unlock the benefits of the reform process. This underscores the government's fresh approach to get participation and views from the private sector to accelerate the growth of India's space industry and make it a global hub. The PM at the launch of ISpA, as we call it, the Indian Space Association, said that under Government of India's approach, there are four pillars, namely freedom of innovation to private sector, Government of India as an enabler, future-ready talent, and lastly, space as a resource for common man's progress. The time for linear innovation is over, but it is for exponential growth now, and the government is not a handler but an enabler. We strongly echo the views of the government that India has the potential to become a major player. With the around $360 billion space industry globally, India has the potential to become a technology leader in the global space industry. Globally, the space race has truly begun and accelerating every day with powerful, large countries moving their space agenda at fast pace. In such cases, government support is critical. We have the skills and infrastructure in form of ISRO to grow our share of global marketing, high-end technology into country, and also create skilled jobs. Private participation in space communication sector opens up multiple opportunities for India. Out of the total space economy globally of $370 billion, Indian share is hardly 2.6% in 2020, whereas India's space economy is likely to reach $12.8 billion by 2025 with a CAGR of more than 6%. So we are at the tipping point moment for satellite industry growth in India. All industries and technologies need to work in harmony to fulfill the vision of global connectivity and broadband for all. Our view is that satellite companies and telcos can't coexist, which is critical for satellite services. We also await the final clarity on the new Spacecom policy from the government. Media reports suggest that the government is ready to come up with this policy in early April. Now let me turn to OneWeb. As a major investor in OneWeb, Bharti Group is leading the private satellite revolution in India. Here too, OneWeb will bring connectivity to every square inch of the country, connect the remotest part of the country, all the way from Jaisalmer to the hills of Northeast, from the Indian Ocean, all the way up in the north. OneWeb already launched nearly 400 satellites, and a total of 650 plus LEO satellites will be finally launched. We believe that OneWeb services can add immense value to telcos in form of backhaul for 5G in remote areas, serving Industry 4.0, and also as well as in IoT for use cases like maritime, aviation, and defense. In India, we will distribute this through our partner Hughes. OneWeb aims to commence services 50 degrees north of latitude this year and cover the globe by end of 2022. Our aim is to start services uh, in the country later this year. We have also entered into agreement with ISRO, where we'll be using ISRO's PSLV and new rocket GSLV Mach 3. This MOU is in place to explore the opportunities for this, with OneWeb becoming a customer and bringing using the commercial services from ISRO. As an important player, we have submitted our inputs to the government on the draft Spacecom policy, and we are sure we have also been participants to the TRAI consultation papers, which have been very timely, and Chairman Vagila has really, shown the way. And with Mr. Pawan Goenka in space, we are very sure that the Spacecom policy is headed for this right, formulation. What are the policy and regulatory dimensions which we are talking about? There is a considerable demand for satellite-based communications, which will grow with the implementation of initiatives like 5G, IoT. The space communication sector will be able to harness these opportunities if our policy and regulatory frameworks play the critical role. And some of the ingredients are already there. The NDCP, which is our National Digital Communication Policy, clearly identified the complementary role of the satellite in connected. To quote, it is necessary to explore and utilize the opportunities presented by next generation networks like 5G and other pioneering network access technologies, including satellite communication, unquote, and create specific strategy 1.3 in the policy towards it, listing out the action items. With recent telecom reforms having set the path for industry's future, and with InSpace as a new regulator for the private space sector, we are hopeful and positive that the space sector is moving towards the reformist trajectory. To launch the service in India, we would need landing rights and set up ground stations, and we are at a very advanced stage of this interaction and discussion and approval with the government and the Department of Telecom and the ISRO. In terms of policy expectations, what does it mean? It means that we have to have absolute foundation to have visionary policy with clear and implementable milestones. The policy must pivot around attracting sustainable investments and private participation. India needs a policy mix that nurtures and secures the private industry, a policy that promotes ease of doing business, keeps cost of rollout low, and cost of compliance is manageable. Since sector is being opened first time for private ecosystem for investors and entrepreneurs, this would mean we have to have simple and predictable policy regime. Therefore, policy must ensure level playing field, non-discriminatory, be fair and consistent, and not disturb the long-term investments by sudden flip-flop or changes. Specifically, I think India is today for gateway, we are required to apply for a service license. And I think the time has come to change this perhaps to a registration certificate, and the service license may be used for providing a service in retail. The regulatory approval process should also be simple, and I'm sure the new formulation in InSpace is going to ensure that processes should not be duplicated, and it should address the genuine concerns of a single window system for getting the clearances in place. Spectrum is also a very critical part. Spectrum capabilities will be the lifeline for space and satellite sector. It's absolutely critical that we follow the global best practices in allocation of bandwidth. We follow the ITU radio regulations and prioritize satellite spectrum allocations as the way the ITU has decided. Existing regulatory changes also need to be rationalized into a single levy to cut down the cost of expensive bandwidth. There should be opportunities available in USO support, and it is being done across the world. And in India too, we can use the USO subsidy support to connect the unconnected villages, rural and remote areas to satellite services. With Atmanirbhar Bharat, the focus is again shifted to achieve sustainable development through local manufacturing. Thus, for space sector in India, the time is ripe for formulation of industry-friendly policies, wherein the stakeholders, including the private players, get their voice heard and thus can draw the fullest of their capacity for the benefit of the industry. Another important aspect is to look at the approach we are going to have towards broad oversights we are going to have on pricing and business models. And it is better to rely on ex post approach for regulating the sector than ex ante intervention. And that should be in exceptional cases only. So we need to make the regulatory impact assessment a standard practice from day one to be among the world's finest regulators. So, friends, this is some of the thoughts I had as we transition this journey of space. I'm sure with the vision of this government and with active support from the regulators like InSpace and TRAI, space is headed for a very uh, enterprising launch. And I look forward to the launch of OneWeb services in coming months. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Vatts, for such valuable insights and looking into the future. Now, I would like to invite eminent association heads, Lieutenant General Anil Bhat, DG ISPA, Anil Prakash, DG SIA-India, for the panel discussion on space race and ground realities. The session is moderated by Gajendra Upadhyay, editor, Voice&Data. Over to you, Gajendra.
Good afternoon, all, and welcome to this session. Today, we are going to talk about the space segment, which is actually in many ways the final frontier for all of us. The space segment today, overall globally, is about a $450 billion industry and expected to grow to about $500 billion in the next 2 years. We have amongst us today two of the most well-known people from the industry in India, Lieutenant General Anil Bhat, who represents the Indian Space Association, which is the organization that represents the space industry as a whole. And we have Anil Prakash, Director General of the Satcom Industry Association of India. Welcome, sir, both of you, and thank you for joining this session. I will start with General Bhat with a quick question, sir. The Indian Space Association was set up under the vision of the Honorable Prime Minister to address the growing needs of the space sector and make India a global power by 2030 in the space sector. Sir, would you like to just share some thoughts on what was the background and what ISpA is doing today?
I'll start with the very beginning. In June 2020, the Prime Minister and the cabinet under him took a historical decision, and that was to open space to private industry. Thereafter, draft policies on space communication and on remote sensing were released by the government somewhere in October 2020. The same year, the Prime Minister met the captains of space industry in India as well as startups. And during his conversation with them, he advised them that they should open an association which could be a bridge between them and the government and also help in creating the ecosystem. And this is where the idea of ISpA came into being. As you're well aware, we were honored to have the Prime Minister for our launch on 11th October last year. And the Prime Minister laid down very significant vision of his, where he said the government would be an enabler and ultimately all space activities would lead to assist the common man. He also talked of innovation being permitted in all the domains, as also to create the next generation of scientists in India or develop this capacity in the Indian domain for the next few generations, that India becomes a leader in the space economy. We are already there in the elusive and club which is there of the space faring nations. What was wanted more now was that we also become a global economic hub. And that is where ISpA was made. And our primary aim is to ensure ease of doing business and policy stability in the country. And more importantly, encourage and facilitate all domains of space activities. By all domains, I mean space communication, which is primarily for broadband, for design, manufacturing, and R&D in launch vehicles, in satellites, in various payloads, and most importantly, downstream, the application of services. Because the largest segment of the space economy is the applications. With that as an overall aim, what we have looked into is capacity building in the country, ensure international partnerships are made by our private industry to pick up the best global practices world over. Also, we look at being an interface between the armed forces, the strategic players, and our private industry, because we envisage in the future, private industry would also become a supplier for our strategic industry. Also, most importantly, is to ensure that soft touch regulatory policies are made. And the most positive part of that is that we have, and our private industry players have had very intimate interactions with the Department of Space and within space in formulating the new policy which has to come. The initial discussions took place in October, where the industry point of view was put across by us and other members. This was very positively taken. And the last interaction we have had on 2nd February. Now, as we see, the government is making one all-encompassing space activities bill, which would cover aspects of satellite communication, remote sensing, sat-nav, and all other domains. This policy is in a very advanced stage of being now promulgated. There was an intimate interaction with our industry members and space associations, and we are looking forward to this policy to come to open the door finally for private players to get into it.
Thank you, sir. So that's a grand vision. And as always, I think we're looking forward to the space industry growing in India. Anil Prakashji, it will be great to hear the background for the SIA and the context in which it was set up. You represent some of the most well-established brands in the satellite communications industry globally also. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. First of all, let me thank and congratulate Voice&Data for organizing this telecom leadership program. And thanks Gajendra, thanks General Bhat for being here. So whatever General Bhat said, I 100% agree with him. That the role of policy making is done by the government is in the positive direction. And SIA-India was participant into all the previous discussion, as General Bhat said, and we have given our input to that. But what misnomer or misunderstanding by the satellite communication, it was irrigated by the Prime Minister himself during their launch. So that has made the bureaucracy, the policy-making body in the country to understand use of satellites. And very few people knows that there are close to about 900 broadcasting channels powered by satellite. There are close to what 12,500 VSAT terminals deployed by, I think there are 50,000 ATMs are working, and there are about close to about 6,500 petrol pumps. The 40,000 village kiosks are being powered by the satellite, and all the digital cinema, which is at the given show about opening show, about 3,000 digital screens are being powered by satellite. And we take it satellite as it's a natural thing, but we forgot satellite real use of digital connectivity in the country. Still, more than 53% rural population is not connected with satellite. It is irony in the policy making in terms of that India still lag behind in the digital connectivity in spite of having satellite connectivity available. And the disaster mitigation, the roles of defense, national security, stock exchange, the satellites have done wonder into performing well. I think, and being in satellite communication, being ubiquitous in nature, anywhere, anytime, it can provide the connectivity. So to back up that, as General Bhat already said, that ISRO has definitely played a pivotal role in creating the space industry or satellite industry in India. The number of large company has been established, which has been supported by ISRO, and now they have gone so big, and then they are looking for international cooperation, or they are doing international collaboration. They are working with number of foreign companies. And same time, the number of startups, we have more than 100 startups in the country, and that's equivalent to the startups in Asia Pac countries, and the development which is taking place in the country it is very, very positive. And the policy making and the association role are that to protect their interest and make it business, ease of doing business, General Bhat said, make it happen. And the startups there are a number of issues they are facing that should be also handled cautiously by the government. So this is the role of our association or any association to help the industry to grow, help this thing. And so this is the pivotal role which we envisage and doing for the oversight for the industry. Thank you.
Great, sir. Thanks for that introduction. This industry is definitely going to. You spoke about connectivity to some of the remotest parts. General Bhat, and this question can be divided between both the participants. General Bhat, one of the areas that you represent as ISpA are the low Earth orbit satellite communications service providers, right? So I'll break my question into two small parts. One is, what is your assessment of the satellite industry in India as such? And how do you think the LEO satellites are going to address the needs of broadband solutions in our country?
Till now and traditionally and historically, it was the geo satellites which were providing satellite communication in India. World over, it has been a disruptive technology. It has been a new domain where low Earth orbit constellations are being created by global players. One such global player, thankfully, is owned in a large portion by an Indian company, that is Bharti Airtel. And they have launched more than 2/3 of their satellites, around 450 out of 648 which they have to launch. And once this constellation comes into shape, they would be able to provide high-speed broadband connectivity and capacity throughout the country. What it helps in is what Mr. Anil Prakash was saying, it will help in overcoming the digital divide. The unconnected portions where terrestrial communication has a challenge because of the cost, because of the kind of the terrain, the large areas and low densities. This is where broadband from LEO has a capacity to move. And as you know, LEO has a large number of small satellites which continuously are passing over our country and are available to provide seamless, ubiquitous communication all over.
Right, sir. So do you have any assessment of, what the industry size is today?
There are no clear figures on to say what is the industry size in satellite communication. But the way there are capacities which are required in India, both in the rural areas and in the urban areas, and what is the capacity which is available today in broadband, there is a scope, a very large scope for both terrestrial players and sat communication to co-travel, to provide this digital communication to the entire.
Thank you, sir. I'll move to Anil Prakash ji, and it is an area that I'm sure you might be well versed with. You spoke about the VSAT industry, which is a fairly established industry in our country. It's been there for the last at least 18 or 20 years or so. And you spoke about connectivity using VSATs across many ATMs and petrol pumps, etc. Would you be able to throw some light on how this can bridge the digital divide, the VSAT sector and the other satellite players that you represent?
VSAT is definitely playing an important role, apart from providing data connectivity as per their licensing condition. But DOT has made the licensing condition change, and they allow also to provide backhaul service to the cellular mobile communication, and they're doing well. And their network, they're supporting the terrestrial network in some places where they don't have a backhaul. So satellite is definitely playing an important role. Now they're also playing an important role in the digital connectivity in the northeast area, that the bio-infested area where physical reach out is difficult, and their number of under the USO fund obligation, they are providing the connectivity through the telecom service provider. So that's the role. Apart from there, they have capability of providing broadband to a number of places, and the Bharat Broadband Network Limited, which is the project, have connecting about 650,000 gram panchayat villages and 250,000 gram panchayats. And I think the 10 to 15% are, as per statement by the minister, they never be connected. This has to be connected by things. So we are pleased that why waiting for them to connect? Why they are not connected at once? There should be, because satellites up in the sky, and these about 10 to 15% villages immediately get connected. So apart from, as you mentioned about the LEO constellation, there are a number of LEO constellations up in the sky. OneWeb is there, then Kuiper is coming from Amazon, then Starlink is coming from Elon Musk. Then there is also 3B constellation from SES, Telesat also coming with. So they're all together, you see, in next 5 to 7 years, there's going to be about close to about 15 to 20,000 new satellites up in the sky. And the beauty of this satellite is that they are close to what their latency is very high. Latency is so very low in terms of connectivity. There is good for connectivity, and they are quite capable of providing large bandwidth to the user. And their demonstration in the other part of the world has shown that their capability. I think that will definitely going to play a very crucial role in the connectivity of rural India or unconnected areas in the country. That's I'm pretty sure about it. And the only thing is that the licensing condition, another thing should be encouraging that. And of course, the one threat which we are facing at this moment are that the satellite bandwidth which was allocated by ITU WRC 19 that is being bifurcated to IMT 5G in the recent consultation process by the regulator fixing a base price for the 5G auction. So that is a mono condition, because if you spectrum is raw material for all the satellite services and satellite application, and if that is being choked, then entire ecosystem will get choked. It will have a very adverse economic impact in the manufacturing, in the employability, in the investment part, in the development of the new sector like ground segment. There is a policy initiative that dealing the licensing from the ground segment gateways, and there is a new set of industries going to emerge, which is the ground segment services. So that is going to impact it.
Great, sir. Thanks a lot.
I would like to emphasize one issue which he has raised, and that is very critical for satellite communication in India. One, the 28 gigahertz bandwidth, and more specifically the 27.5 to 28.5, which is an uplink frequency, which has traditionally been with the space. And as far as WRC 19 goes, the ITU's policy goes, should be with space. For global harmonization, it is very critical that this stays. Just to give you figures from a Plum consultancy report, the impact of this not being available or it being available will be from $72 to $184 billion to a GDP after 5 years, every year. And this will be lost out if this frequency is given away from sat communication. And the second issue is of auctions. Nowhere in the world is spectrum for space auction. And it is important that it continues that way, and it is given in the administrative method, because unlike terrestrial communication, in space, the same frequency bands are shared by multiple satellites. And hence, if it is auctioned, firstly, there'll be a price challenge, And secondly, there will be segmentation of what little frequency we have. So I would like to emphasize these two issues, which are very important for SAT communication and which we have all raised with TRAI, with all the authorities possible, that the status quo, that is the frequency to continue with space and it to be given by administrative methods, has been emphasized by us.
Right, sir. A very, very important point you highlighted, sir. And that brings me to one of the core themes for today's discussion, which talks about space race and ground realities. In many ways, sir, Voice and Data has been chronicling Indian telecoms for last 25, 26 years. We are at an initial stage in the space segment, I feel. The regulatory side, the policy side, these are all evolving issues and need to be sorted out. So as an association that represents the industry that's going to solve the broadband problem from space, it would be good to hear what are the other core. Spectrum was the big one, but there will be other issues relating to maybe interconnection on the ground with the mobile operators, or maybe the price of the devices that people in remote areas will need to access this broadband. It will be good to hear a few thoughts from you on that, sir.
So the other issue, and which again Mr. Anil Prakash did mention, is the policy on licensing, and most importantly, the earth stations. We would look at this policy to come at the earliest, and a clarification on this being there, that LEO circuits and all, even NGSOs are able to provide SAT communication in India. So the policy issues and light touch policies with a single window are very important. And that is where we are very, very optimistic, because the space policy, where discussions have taken place, now in space would be a single window for all issues, matters of space. Now, that's very important that this is also coordinated with the Department of Telecommunication, that our industry players here have ease of doing business to set up this whole issue. The other issue, what you are saying, is of pricing, because in the far and remote areas, maybe the ability for players to pay would be not so high. So initially, like connecting the villages, panchayats, connecting government facilities and all, support of the government financially also would be important. It could be in terms of different incentives. I'm not going to specify which one. Will it be a subsidy? Will it be a fund which will be there, or other means? But in the beginning, this would definitely help to overcome the digital divide. And we are expecting that the government will help us, help this SATCOM industry in this. In the long run, yes, market forces will take over. And as volumes increase, as the numbers increase, this will become as competitive as any sector.
Absolutely. Anil Prakash, love to hear your thoughts on this.
I totally agree with him. And I think there is a government has to play a major role in that connectivity. And what we are asking, we are not asking any special favor. We are asking only the level playing field should be given to the SATCOM industry. In terms of use of fund is available for rural connectivity, and that should be judicially all the players who technology can provide the connectivity should be encouraged and should be given. Yes, and one thing that we talk more about the satellite bandwidth is costly in the country and it is not viable, and you have to look at the factors which raise the cost. How all of a sudden the same bandwidth which is available in US and the Europe, and all of a sudden when it comes to India, it's become costly. What are the factors involved into it? We have to see that there are artificial, or there are some levies and taxes are put on it. It makes it 50% cost, make 50% more costly. And so, especially in this special zone, special connective area, government is giving subsidy or giving some funds and other way taking back the money. So I think that should be rational, and in terms of at least the rural connectivity, some part they should do away with this taxing, GST, the NOC charges, wireless spectrum charges, the bandwidth charges by NSIL. So if you do away this, I think that the cost will definitely come down and affordable. And I agree with General Bhat that there are a number of institutions available in any corner, whether it's a government facilities or there will be some mills or some private sector activities will be there which will be need to be connected. Right now, there's no way we can connect them. And government has a special scheme which is called Government User Network, in which they have invested close to about 15,000 crore to BBNL, but is still not put to use because the last mile is not connected. So this is very important. I think we are a young nation, but how long we are going to remain young? We are already become middle age now. The way things are going, I think Mr. Sunil Mittal said in Davos that we need about 5 to 7 years to get half the population connected of the world. We can't wait 5 7. India can't wait for 5 7 years. It is only thing is that it's a policy enablement allow this technology to spur and provide connectivity. That is the need of it.
Thank you. And so, you're talking about the young nation, and I think, sir, the satellite SIA, Satcom Industry Association, is also working with, new startups and new use cases. Would you be able to highlight?
Yeah, but we feel that these 100-odd startups they need a special handling because these are quite vulnerable. Because first of all, everyone carries the Indian IPR with them. That is the Indian IPR is this India's identity and Indian IPR, which is they have taken lead, and that's the only sector where tech sector where India has got a sizable lead into that. And these need to be protected. When they say the startup funding, and they should stand in the queue of 36,000 startups, 60,000 startup, and I think the 100 or 500 odd startups should be dealt separately. And I think government is looking into that. We have given a presentation to that. And see, you have to make these people successful. If they are successful, the other 500 will follow them, and then 1,000 will follow them. So this is very important thing. And we are also requesting our members who are in the manufacturing area or in the service area, we're asking them to help this startup. We also launch a legal cell in our association. We have close to 8-9 law firms who are our members of the Space Law Committee. And these all firms have come forward and set up a legal cell to provide pro bono information or guidance or information on the law to all the startups. And we already have a startup committee which work with the Space Legal Cell Committee, and they are finding meeting grounds more and more. So the startups are quite vulnerable in terms of they don't have wherewith to deal or engage with the law firms and to guide them, because each contract which is signed, and this is and they have to see that what are the pros and cons of signing those agreements, because all are governed by international treaties or international, punitive clause and international law, liability clause. And I really think both the organization have challenged this into the policy framework that the startup should be kept away from the punitive clause, so they should be sovereign, should take the load of that. And that there we be trying to hold up these startups. And we're meeting them quite often with them and trying to understand, trying to finalize their program.
General Bhat, if I'm not wrong, ISpA is also closely interfacing with ISRO, and you also are probably working with some of the interesting startup use cases in agri-tech and others using satellites. So love to hear that.
Definitely for growth of the space ecosystem in India, startups are very critical and very important. And we have many startups which indicate a very strong potential to do very well. And many of them, fortunately, have got good financial support from the venture capitalists, from the private sector. Of course, as they grow, money from even if the government would be welcome for them to grow up. But what we are essentially providing them is a common platform because they have different capabilities, that they can combine their capabilities to firstly give end-to-end solutions. Secondly, we very strongly believe in carrying out policy advocacy for them. Each one of them, they have to be helped, guided, and that is why a formation of InSpace which has taken place and where most of the promotion and authorization will take place. We are working and we will continue to work very closely with InSpace, which would be the face for the private industry and more importantly for the startups, as well as the Department of Space. With the new chairman, when he took over, after a week of that, we got an opportunity, fortunately, to brief him on what are the challenges which the new industry is facing, what are the solutions which are there, which we suggested, and we also are looking forward to his interface with all our private industry players in the future. That he and the chairman in space interact with the industry face to face to listen to the issues. Many of them we have already raised it, but also have a personal touch of meeting all these startups and all our space industry players, which we are very sure will happen very soon.
Sure, sir. And sir, with that, I think we are running out of time, and that brings us to a close of this discussion. General Bhat, thank you so much for sparing the time and sharing such valuable views. Anil Prakash ji, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Gajendra, and all speakers for enlightening us about the space race.